So even by capitalist metrics of success, Bolivia was doing phenomenally well under socialism, which of course, that's part of the problem, right? Because the people that were doing well in this case were the indigenous, the working class Bolivians, and essentially the non-white masses in Bolivia. So even before the election happened, you can see on WikiLeaks, for instance, there are cables with the U.S. government between Chamado and the UJC, and they were plotting together even before the election to overthrow the government, because they of course knew what was coming. They would lose the election and they wouldn't be able to continue their privatization efforts and this sort of thing. So aside from Chamado, there's also the important issue of nationalizing resource industries, and one of the most significant is the lithium salt flats that Bolivia has, and they're, I think, the second largest in the entire world, or at least in the Americas, and that's significant for a number of reasons. It's significant to Canada because, of course, the Canadian state goes to bat for all kinds of resource extractive companies throughout Latin America, and it means that in the transition that those of us would like in the first world to the Green New Deal, that transition that would be dependent on getting cheap resources like lithium in order to make batteries for, say, Tesla cars. So that's one of the interests that is significant here. The other person that we need to look at is essentially the Juan Guaido of Bolivia. She just declared herself president, and like Juan Guaido, she's not really anyone of significance. She she's a senator, but like nobody really knows who she is. She's like a third tier sort of lawmaker, and she was able to declare herself president because she's third in line for succession for the presidency. But the reason that she was able to do that is because obviously the president left, he had to leave, and the two next in succession were also MAS political leaders, and they had to leave because exactly these people, Machado and his Christo-fascist ilk, were kidnapping family members, attacking indigenous people and MAS supporters. So that's again what is happening there is illegitimate. And in fact, earlier today, there was in fact a vote by the Chamber of Senators in Bolivia, and they voted to uphold Morales' presidency. So they reaffirmed his presidency, and they flatly said that he is still the president of Bolivia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't think they were allowed in. So.
Yeah. Well, they got in.
Good.
And now the last I saw, they were actually in the chamber and on a hunger strike as of a few hours ago. So while all this is happening at the official state level, you're also seeing a mass movement of primarily indigenous people out in the streets who are supporters of Morales and who obviously don't want a coup that will result in them being killed. I mean, it's already resulting in that, but they will get killed even more. You're seeing military figures tearing off the huifala on their uniform, which is the Andean indigenous flag that's co-official with the Bolivian state flag. You're seeing Chamado in the presidential palace talking about how Pachamama, which I believe is the sort of Andean indigenous goddess who represents nature. You're seeing him saying that Pachamama will never come back in here again, and we're returning Bolivia to Christ. You're seeing this Añez senator talking about how she's surprised that indigenous people are indigenous when they're wearing shoes. These are essentially people that are of a piece with Bolsonaro, with Trump, of course, because how else could they get in power except for that support? So we're here to oppose both that crypto-fascist or the fascist coup, and we're also here to oppose the Canadian support that has made it happen. We're here to oppose Chrystia Freeland working with Bolsonaro to sow that kind of thinking throughout the region. We're here to oppose the Canadian state doing that within Canada as well, because it's all connected. you know, what they're doing in Unison, what they're doing in Alton Gas, they're doing throughout Latin America, and they have been for quite some time. You know, it hasn't stopped since the 1900s at least. You see it in 1973 with Allende. You see it in Haiti in 2004. You see it in Honduras in 2019. You see it in Venezuela, Nicaragua. I mean, you could basically just throw a dart anywhere in Latin America, and you would find somewhere that the U.S. and Canada has tried to overthrow. So I think it's, you know,
is it going towards civil war?
I mean, it already is a civil war. You know, like indigenous people are out in the streets saying, you know, if this is what you're going to do, this, you know, we're turning this into a civil war. Whether or not they read their Lenin, they know what's going to happen. You know, the whole point is that when you're in a reactionary war, when you're in that kind of a situation, the best thing to do is turn it against them. So you know, we're here to oppose Canada's involvement in the military coup in Bolivia. We're here to point out the fact that many of these military figures in Bolivia are in fact graduates of the School of the Americas, the notorious training ground for military figures throughout Latin America. We're here to support the democratically elected legitimate president of Bolivia, Evo Morales, and his government. We're here to support socialism in Latin America. We're here to hopefully
solidarity.
Yeah, so we're here to oppose the coup. We're here in solidarity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Someone else can talk if they want.